r/AskReddit. Escape the room employees. What is the weirdest thing you've seen someone do in one of the rooms? The most depressing shit I saw was a tired looking couple who brought in their bespectacled, NASA shirt wearing, 8-year-old geek of a son in to have some fun. The parents couldn't have been more discouraging to him. He was excitedly bouncing around the room pointing out things that he thought were clues while the parents dismissed every idea he had and told him to stop getting so excited. The parents took charge and proceeded to ignore the obvious clues he was pointing out and spent most of the time pursuing dead ends. Sad part is his instincts were more often than not correct, but his parents just didn't listen and refused to let him explore and try stuff out. Hopefully his curiosity and enthusiasm survives them. We give people a box for them to bring in, so they can store their belongings while they play. One time, about halfway in, an inquisitive older man started going through their own stuff. He pulled out a purse and shouts, guys, I found some. This is our stuff, isn't it? It was hilarious. For some reason people like to put the flashlight that one of our rooms has in their mouth when they know they aren't the only ones who have used them. Some people put them between their legs, in the crack of their ass as a joke. And not to mention just roll around the ground a majority of the time. Besides that, I've seen relationships almost fall apart. One couple insisted on going into our most challenging room, just the two of them. And we let them know this was probably not going to be a good idea or enjoyable for them. But they didn't really care. You could tell the guy wanted to impress the girl. But both of them were dumber than rocks. I had to sit for an entire hour watching them get literally nowhere through the first puzzle, arguing with each other and then sitting in moments of awkward silence. I offered to give them help and said I would just tell them if they wanted at this point. But they refused. Also, people love to not listen to our disclosure we have to give before we send groups into rooms and kick in our air vents and break through our drywall and ceilings when we specifically say not to, and put tape that says not a part of the game in bright yellow colors. Employee here. One group gave up after 5 minutes and decided to drink alcohol rest of the game. They paid €120 for the game. It was only a one-off escape room I designed for a university society event. But one guy was so desperate to find clues he tried to disassemble the wooden casing around a radiator. It scared me because I didn't own the room we were doing this in. So I could have been on serious trouble. Finally, my time to shine. We had a group that was evidently high. They weren't disruptive or anything. So we just briefed them and took them to their room. So far so good. We have cameras and microphones inside the rooms. That way we know what hints to give out. Another important thing is that the room they were at had a small fountain. And since the particular aesthetic of this room was dusty, that water was filthy. I'm talking murky, brown yellow, mud water. At one point one of the guys says he is thirsty and proceeds to stick his mouth onto the fountain stream and take a hefty gulp of the shit water. We spend a second of shock guffaw and tell them that drinking the fucking water isn't part of the puzzle. The guy reads the hint and just says that's alright. He proceeded to do the same thing 4 times and drank the whole fountain. Small fountain, but still like a gallon of mud water. We've had more inconvenient things happen, but that still remains as the worst thing I've ever seen. Went to an escape the room with some friends on Friday. My one friend took his shirt off 4 times. The crazier thing that happened though was how we solved it. We were supposed to get the word Waterloo from a series of clues and use a dictionary to find that the Battle of Waterloo was in 1815. Use that 4-digit number to get a key that let us out of the room. Well, we got the word Eterloy instead of Waterloo. We assumed that it was an anagram and we used a word scrambler to get the word aerolite from it. Using the dictionary we found that aerolite was invented in 1815. Well, we got the key and we confidently told the employee how we figured it out. He was dumbfounded. I'm not exactly sure what the odds of solving the room like this is. But if someone could solve that for us, that'd be dank. My friends and I have been trying to figure it out since it happened. Did a space station themed room. We got paired with a mother and her adult sons. The sons did just fine, but mom was clueless. There was a prop fire extinguisher on the wall that she was certain had to be for something. For an hour she wandered around aimlessly carrying a fire extinguisher. I worked at a room escape place for a year in grad school. I learned very quickly to give thorough warnings at the start of each show that breaking things, assaulting actors, this was trapped in a room with a zombie, and sexual harassment were not cool. Yes. Literally had guys harass the fucking zombie mid-show. Perhaps the most interesting phenomenon I noticed was just how much personality factors into the teamwork involved. I've seen a lot of shy people or people otherwise lacking in confidence be completely on the right track, only to be steamrolled by the loudest, more confident, strongest personalities in the room. Maybe it shouldn't have come as so much of a surprise, but I watched perfectly smart, reasonable people actively ignore good points, logic, and strong evidence in service of a cult of personality of charismatic players. The whole thing felt like a depressing study on group dynamics. Edit. Changed hit on to Harris for greater accuracy. I've explained circumstances in follow-up comments. The guy gave some rules to us when we were doing the room. The first rule he gave us was please keep your clothes on. We used to have a giant banana as a mascot, and once we had a group of kids that were intoxicated and one of the guys in the room started crying, so we decided to let him hold it. So the guy cuddled with it on the ground and fell asleep about 10 minutes into the game. Had the time of his life. 2 best stories from www.pandarazlocks.ca. There are more, but these are the best. We have a room themed like a teen girl's bedroom in the 80s. It has a phone in it. Players can use it. A group of young girls had no idea what it was or how it worked, having grown up with cell phones only. So their Gamma Master had to explain it to them. Best part was it was her personal friends and she was super embarrassed for them. Same room. Gamma Master saw someone with a lighter on camera. Immediately interrupted the room and casually asked why they were using a lighter that they shouldn't have brought in with them. They replied that they were lighting their farts on fire. She suggested that, while hilarious, this might not be the best place for that. Started working in an escape room around 3 months ago. This is not really a weird thing, but more a cute one. One day a dude called and told us he was proposing to his girlfriend and that they were both huge fans of escape rooms. So my boss and came up with a cool idea how we could change our escape room to make it more romantic, and that at the end of the escape they wouldn't find the key of the room but the ring and a bottle of champagne. We also told the dude the solutions of some of the puzzles to make sure they would actually come to the end of the room. It was the cutest thing I have ever seen. The way these two worked together in the room and how excited the dude was when they found the ring and the champagne at the end and he asked to marry her. They were both in tears, so were my boss and I. She said yes. After that they stayed with us for a bit before heading their own way. It is still one of my favorite evenings and one of the reasons I love my newfound job so much. Actual escape room employee here. The weirdest thing I saw was a young couple. In our hardest room, they asked for our hardest. Who, when they couldn't solve our puzzles, took off their shoes and just sat down and talked. When I would send them hints to get them to start playing again, the lady would call me a commie. It was weird. For example, the lady would pick up a red clue paper that goes with a pyramid puzzle. They would stare at it, then put it to the side. I type in a hint, the red papers go with the pyramid. She looks up the screen. We were getting to that. Commie. I'm not a communist. And the room isn't communist themed in the slightest. I saw a man eat a magnet. There are rubber snakes in the room and one has a magnet in its mouth. He thought he should do as the snake did. He offered it back. But we told him once he found it he could keep it. I currently work at an escape room. We had a youth group come in and play some rooms, and halfway in we smell this horrendous smell. Our control room is right next to the room. When we got them out we noticed they built a little tent and inside was 2 giant mounds of shit. Kid took a shit in the room. And we approached the adults and said, oh, that wasn't us, we thought you put that in there. So they denied it. Even though the kid had brown stains down the back of his pants. Our owners called. They confessed and we deep cleaned the room while they got charged for it. Great times. Obligatory, not an employee. But I'm sure my friend group looked pretty weird to them. We did the one where you get stuck in handcuffs and have to unlock them. But we couldn't get the key to work on one of my friends. We assumed that there was another key to get the last person. For some reason. And left her attached to the wall for like 20 minutes. Turns out her cuffs were broken and we had to pause the game so the employees could come get her out with bolt cutters. They were shocked that we'd just left her there, but we thought it was part of it. One time I did an escape room with some people from work. The final clue was what time does Bible study meet? And a 4-digit combo lock. After we couldn't find any useful clues, I just went over to the lock and put in 600, 0615, etc. It opened at 0700. Apparently we were supposed to look out the window to where the church across the street had their schedule printed on a big sign. According to the attendant, nobody had ever tried that before. I don't work at Escape the Room. I work at Breakout Games. But it's the same deal. I had a couple in a handcuffed blindfolded room start feeling each other up until I said over the microphone, just a reminder that I can see you guys from 4 cameras in the room. If you need any hints, let me know. Edit. Additional story, we had a customer try to put his finger in an outlet because he thought a key was in it. That isn't his fault because there are rooms that do this. But I was scared half to death. I don't understand why any escape room would put anything important in a place that normally is a hazard. Actual escape room employee here. One couple couldn't agree on how to solve the puzzles and broke up inside the room. Another couple had the guy surprise the girl with a proposal. Another couple got a horror themed escape room and just sat on the floor and cuddled. They didn't look scared. They didn't bother to solve anything either. They just cuddled with all the creepy props and sound effects surrounding them. I guess they couldn't find a creepy motel to cuddle in? Actually work in an escape room, but this one happened to my colleague. We have this false door who led to a wall, which is to make people believe that's the way they came in. They are blindfolded at first. One guy was so happy that he found the last key in a record time. That when he opened the door, he slammed his head so hard that the group in the next room got scared. At our establishment we have a room called Jailbreak with a fake door towards the very end. It's covered with plywood. This girl takes one look at it and says jail, break, and charges the door full force and breaks through. Escape room employee here. Actually answering this while I'm watching a room. Here are a few of my strangest encounters. Sex has not happened, but people have gotten very close. Had a guy hide under the camera and use a pocket knife to cut the hinges off a box because they couldn't figure out the lock. Had a team escape purely because the toddler was mashing buttons on the escape keypad for 20 minutes straight. More than once people fall asleep in the rooms. If anyone had any more questions, I'll try to answer them. A team failed to escape a room because no one knew how to spell balloon and were too embarrassed to ask for help. I went to a space-themed escape room and there was a spacesuit and I put it on. It didn't help us solve anything. When we finished I asked, do people normally put the suit on? The guy said it's not against the rules, but you're the first person to do it. Edit. This was in Texas. It wasn't the opening, but it was relatively new. They only had 2 rooms at the time. The place is called Escape. It was a team building exercise for a school thing we were doing. We finished with 5 minutes left of 45 to complete the puzzle. I'd recommend looking them up. Also we had a guy high on what I assume was MDMA rubbing his nipples constantly under his shirt and grinding his jaw. That's all he did for 45 minutes. It was extra funny cause our cameras are night vision and his pupils were insane. He was on a staff party and was the only one who seemed to be high. Clearly not a team player. I'm not an escape room employee, but I asked this exact same question when I went to an escape room a few months ago. The guy working there said a man pulled out a pocket knife and started cutting the carpet out, convinced that there were clues under there. Not an employee, but participated in an escape room in which a key was stuck to a filing cabinet by one of those weird little metal puzzles. The key was to open a drawer in a desk on the opposite side of the room. No one could get the metal puzzle undone. So the guys just picked up the filing cabinet and carried it over to the desk. It was a mob themed room, so we received a phone call warning about rearranging the furniture that was hilariously in character. We escaped the room. I work at one. The first group we ever put into a room was a family and the mom tried to put a key in the electrical socket. We caught it just in time on the camera and have covered them since. I had a group pull out a toolkit. They unscrewed every furniture to find some combinations. They didn't escape and I made them fix every ring. Took them about an hour. Not an employee but my co-worker during a team building exercise at an escape room was telling me that he had done one of the other ones with his mom. There was a briefcase on a table in which his mom went up to it and put in a code right away without even doing the puzzles to get the code. Turns out, it was her briefcase that she sold to a woman a year earlier who was the owner of the escape room. As soon as he told the story, the employees got excited and said that his mom's situation is infamous among the employees there. Told far and wide. Small world. We did an escape room one time where there were these jars with severed limbs in them. When we got out we commented to the guy running it that we found it interesting that the jars were cement glued shut. Cement glued to the shelf. And the shelf screwed to the wall. Seemed like overkill to us. Well, apparently the reason they do this was because another group had managed to pry the jars away from the shelf and open the jars. This is about when they realized, watching the cameras, that something was going on. So they rush in to see what's up and he hears, "Guys, we have to drink the water." The nasty part was the water was out of the local river a few blocks away. Just to get that dirty murky look. A guy didn't help any of his friends, he just sat and ate 2 pints of ice cream which he had snuck past me. Just started working at Escape the Room and we have rules about not jumping out the windows and not sticking keys into wall sockets because it has all happened before. Not an employee myself and not a real escape room but this might fit anyway. There was an augmented reality attraction in Munich a few years ago where visitors would walk alone through a bunker which was decorated like an old hospital including a room with body bags on the wall. A visit took 1 hour and you were down there completely alone. But the employees wouldn't tell you that. You can guess how surprised the staff were when one visitor upon exiting remarked on the scary looking guy in the corner not reacting to anything. Naturally the employees went down into the bunker to see who else was there but they found everything as it was. No person was down there. After looking around a bit more they found the scary looking guy. A drug addict from the central train station nearby had snuck into the attraction and climbed into one of the body bags hanging on the wall to sleep there. Some dude was eating this chick's ass when we checked on them. My friends and I did one escape room that had a bunch of tin cans scattered across the rooms. Like 25 of them. Not sure who got it in their heads that we needed them. But for some reason we started carrying them from room to room. Each of us with handfuls of tin cans. They served no purpose. There was never anything about needing tin cans. The guy running the thing was killing himself laughing at us once we got out. Of course. He then had to go out them all back. The escape room I went to started with all 6 of us being blindfolded and standing handcuffed to chains attached to a rolling cot. We took off our blindfolds and looked around. The only light in the room was from a television in the corner. I noticed a paper clip on the floor in the corner. So I had everyone move with me so I could get it. I used the paper clip to pick the lock on my handcuffs. Then started picking the cuffs of the person next to me. The watcher said on the intercom, "How did you get out of those handcuffs?" I said I picked them with the paper clip in the corner. He said, "That's not supposed to be there. The handcuff key is on the wall behind you." One of our puzzles has to do with a bunch of lights and paper stapled at the intersections to the lights. Needless to say, groups like to rip the paper down and lay them on the floor to try and solve the puzzle and got confused when they needed the lights to order the words on the paper. I'm not with Escape the Room, but I work for a very successful room near a city. I see a lot, but most of it isn't good fun. The usual stuff is just friends yelling at each other. Maybe a couple strain their relationship with a fight. Though the weirdest things range from teenagers making out. We have cameras in our rooms. I've had successful proposals in rooms. This one kid once stuck a prop into a power outlet and caused a tiny fire. And once a guy was rummaging through the ceiling and got electrocuted. Both the fire and electrocution were fine. But those were the dumbest things. My so had a friend who went to an escape room and the employees forgot to brief the important rule to them. If it's screwed, nailed, or glued together, don't take it apart. if it doesn't come loose with little effort. It's not a clue. Well, they walk in. The door shuts behind them. And immediately the friend curb stomps a chair to pieces because he thought a clue would be hidden inside it somehow. That's not how escape rooms work, and now you owe them a new flimsy chair. In our room, there is a flagpole that's purely decorative. It has nothing to do with a puzzle. This guy was 100% certain it was a clue and had been messing with it for the entire game. He eventually had the whole thing taken apart and was holding the pole of the flag. The room he was playing is horror themed, and the rest of his team solved something which caused a scare. He lost it. He freaked out, crouched, turned around, and threw the flagpole like a javelin at the wall, which shattered a picture frame. Needless to say, they didn't finish their game. I'm an escape room employee. Lady last week was so drunk she started screaming at other customers and she ran into other people's room. Basically a total shit show. Another thing that happened. We had two teenage couples come in and one couple was totally into doing a room while the other couple was just intent on making out the whole time. When they came out of the room they wanted to do another one, but the makeout couple didn't. So they just sat in the lobby in front of everyone making out for 45 minutes. Owner of an escape room here. Couple things. Dad threatened to cut off child's arms with lasers in the room. Mum farted loudly in room and stunk up the place. Other guests were very uncomfortable. Couple gave up 3/4 way though and just started making out in the corner. -40ish female was so scared she actually started to cry and ran out the emergency exit. For your information, she actually ended up giving us a really good review. Escape room employee here. In one of our rooms, we have an actor pose as a spy, and the people in the room had to solve a case to figure out who the traitor was. After they finished the puzzles, it turns out the traitor was actually the spy the actor was playing. The spy then pulls an obviously prop gun, orange tip and whatnot, and the group has to defuse a fake bomb. One of the groups that did this room was a police squad that was doing this to Bond. When the actor pulled the fake gun and said some cheesy lines, the actor was promptly tackled and restrained until the cops realized it was all a game. Edit. It's defuse and not defuse. I'm a dang ol' goofus. On a works night out a couple of weeks ago, one of my co-workers got blackout drunk before we were supposed to meet up at the venue. When we all got there, it was pretty obvious how drunk this guy was as he was stumbling across chairs and slurring his words. Anyways, we all got split into groups to go into our separate rooms. We entered the room and the lights were turned off. Then this guy starts declaring how much he needs to piss. This was one of the horror rooms, loosely based on the Saw movies. So there was an empty toilet with a key to open one of the padlocks for a puzzle inside. He literally pulls his pants down to his ankles and starts urinating in this standalone toilet. Everyone is looking in horror at what the fuck is happening in front of them. Piss is flowing from the bottom of the toilet onto the floor now. Everyone is backed up into a corner to avoid the ominous trickle of doom. Children are screaming. Somehow, the employees never noticed until we had made it out of the room and he was left behind sleeping on one of the mattresses cuddling with a bloody dead body. Current escape room employee. Had a blind date come in and do one of our rooms. Guy and a girl. 30 minutes in, the guy leaves the room passing by the front desk yelling "This bitch is crazy." Leaving. The poor girl stayed in the room, attempting to finish by herself, seemingly unfazed. Sadly our rooms require at least 2 people to finish. Also had a game in which a guy continually kept hitting the emergency escape button, thinking it was the hint button. This happened so many times I had to go into the room, walk him over to the hint button, and then to the emergency button, explaining the difference. We point these things out in the brief beforehand, in a not so hard to understand way. Non-specific stories include people who are high as fuck, who basically sit in the room and do nothing, and people who are drunk as fuck, who sit in the room and break everything, then puke in our hallways. Don't drink and go to an escape room, but feel free to smoke beforehand. Easy reset. Throwaway for reasons. Last month I had a group of a famous-ish television show cast and crew to play one of our rooms. I was their host games master. They played, were slightly drunk, but they were a lot of fun. They were clever too, and got out with a decent time. After they left, my boss got a message over Facebook from the director of this TV show. He said he had a great time and wanted to know my full name so that he could thank me over Facebook. My boss did ask me if this was okay, and I didn't see a problem with it. In hindsight, I should have said no. He then added me on Facebook and proceeded to sext me. He started asking stuff like, "What if we were all naked in the room? What would you have done with us?" And he also complimented my trouser bulge. And he sent me a dick pic. Even after I told him I wasn't gay and had a girlfriend. I pride myself on being a good host. This was validation in a weird way. I went for a job interview at an escape room. My group didn't escape the room, so we didn't go through to the next round. I think they were using the process to get people to test new puzzles for free. We had a group come in last year who were doing really well. Got about halfway through the game and then hit a wall. One guy left the room to go out to his car, and when he came back he had a whole 30 rack in his bag. The whole team proceeded to sit in a circle and use their remaining 30 minutes to kill the entire thing. It was pretty damn impressive to watch. Not an employee or anything as bad as some of the stuff in here, but last time I went to one with my friends there was a hole in the wall that you're supposed to reach through to manipulate something and get a coin. One of my friends is a very small, 5'ft", Asian girl, and instead of reaching through the hole she just crawled through instead. Employees found it hilarious and said that they'd never had that one before. Not an employee, but we did one where we were handcuffed to the bench. Solved the room while still handcuffed by moving the bench around and attempted to walk out the door with it. The employee said that was the weirdest thing he's ever seen given that the key was on the wall behind us. The zombie in our room cornered me while he was on all fours. Then he started rubbing the top of his head on my crotch and grunting and breathing really heavily. He did this for a good 10-15 seconds while I just stood there, frozen. At that point I said, "Well, I guess if you can do that I'm out, right?" and awkwardly shuffled past him from the corner where he had me pinned to the dead corner. It was a real hit for my co-workers to see that. Escape room employee here. We have a zombie themed escape room where an actor dresses as a zombie and is chained to the corner of the room. And every 5 minutes he gets an extra foot of chain. Somebody once used the props to distract the zombie, a chain hook used as a fishing hook on rope and pole, and stabbed the zombie in the eye. The zombie screamed and the guy kept doing it thinking the scream was fake. Set up a room specifically for a couple with props for them and he proposed. Had a drunk 4'8" woman attempt to fit a prop larger than her person and attempt to steal it. Adult themed room normally had people sneak in alcohol too. People have tried to climb through the ceiling tiles on multiple occasions. We now have to mention in the pre-game spiel that it's not necessary to climb through the ceiling tiles. My job often reminds me of this scene in The Office. People laugh at the things we mention, but anything we mention that you don't have to do has probably been attempted before. One of my co-workers said that a group started getting really destructive in the room, to the point where they literally threw the computer on the floor to see if something was hidden inside. There wasn't anything hidden inside. They need to use a special magnifying glass to read the monitor. We abruptly removed them from the room after that. They actually ended up coming back another day and were extremely well behaved. I guess they learned their lesson. I work at 5 Wits, and when kids get scared, most of the time their parents won't even leave the room adventure with them. They send their kid out the emergency exit to wait for them to finish. That kid normally ends up wondering where they shouldn't if one of us doesn't see them. We have had a few kids end up lost wandering the back halls of the mall, and parents want to get mad at us. Like, we told you they have to have an adult with them at all times. I hope I didn't miss out here. I am an escape room employee. One of our rules we give is to not eat any portion of our game. We had to add that after the fact. Another weird thing we had someone do was try to fit the smallest person through a slot we had made for a gate we built. The intention was to use a device to acquire items through the slot and open the gate with those items to get to something bigger. I've seen people try to dismantle our cot we have in one of our rooms that's designed as a war bunker. I've seen people use the studs inside the wall with magnetic pieces of our game to try and get out. Lamps are just the worst. I think a lot of employees can relate here. All of our games are family friendly, but we have groups that are just so jumpy even though none have a horror component. They seem to think someone is lurking in the shadows, which I would be just as surprised about if there was. I usually tell people that ask if anyone is hiding in the room that if they find someone else to let me know so that I can run out of the store also. Not an employee. But one time my group of friends walked into Breakout KC. And my friend proceeded to turn off the main circuit breaker. All the doors and some of the traps were locked electronically. So basically we beat the escape room in a record 9 seconds. Don't work in one, but I went to one where there was yellow masking tape covering some stuff. I was told a group went in and started unscrewing the light socket and punching holes in walls looking for clues. They didn't think they would have to tell people not to do those things. Had a drunk guy piss in the corner. We had to add a rule to our waiver because of it. Don't be the guy that makes a sad rule. Former zombie room escape employee. I had to confiscate someone's cell phone for the rest of the hour because she tried to take a picture of something instead of writing notes. During another session, when we were located in the basement of a rock club, a couple people tried to walk in while a session was going on just to see what it was about. I told them 3 times that I couldn't let them in. And finally, one woman on her birthday took a little bottle of orange vodka out of her purse and used it instead of these weighted balls they had to find for a puzzle. I don't think they successfully escaped, but our zombie for that hour got to keep the orange vodka. Edit. One guy was so strong that he removed a bolt to open a box without the wrench they were supposed to find. I guess the Superman shirt he was wearing gave him superpowers. I own an escape room in Australia, and a guy called up and said he was bringing his friend for her birthday. Her nickname is Pickles. So he requested that at the end of the game, they could find a jar of pickles. So I obliged and went out and bought a jar of pickles and replaced the possessed doll you were meant to find with a jar of pickles. I guess that was the weirdest thing. In our Outbreak Mastermind Escape Games SS, we had a group of teenagers take popsicle sticks and make a pentagram on the floor and proceed to place various objects from around the room at the 5 points. Then they began to chant something inaudibly. To this day, the game master who was watching that game is reluctant to enter the room. Not an escape room employee, but I tried one in Budapest. A specifically stated rules was that we wouldn't have to physically move anything to solve the various puzzles. Anyways, there was one sort of library room that upon entering, my pathetic party of Welsh boys and Irish girls on a pissing tour immediately began ripping all the books off the shelves in a mad savage attempt to find some sort of code. About 15 seconds into this room rape, the middle-aged Hungarian dude working as guide disappointingly reminded us over the intercom that our actions were ultimately unnecessary to solving the cursed room. Needless to say, we all felt a bit foolish. Well, a very common theme is to not follow any of the damn instructions we give them. Yes, you can break through the wall. Yes, you can rip the wooden box to pieces. Yes, that magnetic picture frame can be shattered with the glass orb on the table, but damn it, that's not what you're supposed to do, and it's expensive to fix, you asses. Someone cleared all the boxes and locks off of a table in the corner, laid down on it, and went to sleep until the group escaped. I've been waiting for this thread for a while. I've been a Gamma Master at an escape game for over a year. I have dozens of stories. Rude people, white trash people, mean people, dumb people, drunk people. One time I was called a Renga. Myself having brown hair and blue eyes and being white as paste. This same group threatened to stab me in the middle of my intro and had loud sex in the bathroom. Just yesterday a woman accused me of being a pedophile simply because I watch people on not so hidden cameras. One time a woman was confused for over an hour because she didn't know all our stuff would be locked. Also, it is not uncommon for me to see an erection while I am handcuffing a gentleman, and once I had to clean up a seat where I had handcuffed a woman. If anyone has any more questions or would like to hear more details or even more stories, feel free to ask. I love talking about my job. I've seen a divorce. A man came out as gay to his friends in the room. Various misuses of the props as in somebody not knowing how to use a microscope or a magnet. I got mooned once. I think them's not wild stuff though. Happens in the back room. The people running your room probably have 10x more fun than you do. Some weird shit happens there. We have old computer parts lying around one of our rooms. Like completely torn apart wires. A broken keyboard. Etc. One night I watched drunken guy spend the whole hour in a corner trying to build a computer out of all the parts. We had one group pull out a screwdriver and unscrew every knob and handle off every drawer in the room. Another found a hairpin under some furniture and then complained that it wouldn't open anything. Multiple people would start vaping in the room. 2 people have wet themselves. One tried to bribe me into solving a puzzle for them and another passed out on a table in the middle of the room. Several people have broken or shattered a prop and then hidden it somewhere so we find out during the reset, giving us less time to fix it. And some try to be nice and reset for us, locking back several locks. But that's actually somehow worse, since we have to re-unlock everything to make sure all puzzles are where they should be. And I had one kid who purposefully reset every lock we had and locked them all together into some sort of mega lock. My favorite, though, is the time a guy got frustrated and called his friend for help. He got 3 answers from him, which he tried on all available locks. Then he called to complain that they didn't work. All of his codes were for a different room we had. I went to one last year and one of the 3 employees working at the time was insanely attractive. Like way too hot to be working there. This was also the time when Pokemon Go was at its peak and she let us know that nothing special spawned around here. So she definitely got a bump up for us college guys at the time. Anyways, my roommates and I, 7 of us in total, all go into the room trying our best not to stare too much or make any comments that can be overheard. We fully understand that we're probably being recorded when we get into the room since there's a TV in each that can give us hints if they notice we're struggling. So like 10 minutes into the puzzle, one of my roommates who is a bit of a loudmouth just goes, "I wonder how many times that first girl gets hit on by guys who come in here." To which I immediately respond with, "I wonder how many creepy comments she hears from guys once they get into the room and think they can't hear them." Right after I say that, we look up to the TV because we now see there's text on it. All that's on the screen is. We all laugh, not knowing if that was in response to our conversation. But we all like to imagine that it was. Used to work at Austin Panic Room. One guy proposed to his girlfriend in a room. I was assigned for that shift, so he came in the day before and talked to me about what he was planning on doing. And how he wanted it to go. Normally we'd only be allowed to give so many hints throughout the process, but the day of, since it was just the 2 of them instead of 10 people in their room, I just walked them through it when they would run into any particularly hard puzzles. I had changed the combination to the last lock on the door to be that day's date. And when it was time for them to escape, I gave her the hint. And she started unlocking the door. And he backed up, got on one knee, and was ready for her as soon as she turned around. On our work computer we had access to the cameras. So I saw the whole thing happen. Took a bunch of screenshots and emailed it to them. Got tipped $80. It was a good day. The easiest way to make our life miserable is to propose at one of these. It happened 3 times in the 9 months I worked there. It makes it so we have to get you to finish. And some people aren't smart enough. Had a guy take a screwdriver into the room and begin to unscrew all the locks without telling the rest of his group. He would then take the clue out of the locked drawer box cupboard and then hide it in his back pocket. Then, when the rest of his group actually unlocked the drawer box cupboard, they would find nothing in there and be really confused. Screwdriver guy would then laugh at them and tell them he did it earlier. He did this multiple times. We had a blacklight flashlight attached to a chain and 3 mirrors in the room. My friends and I kept trying to use the mirrors to aim the blacklight somewhere. After about 5 minutes the guy came on the speakers and had to tell us that's not what it was used for. A stupid chain stumped us for a solid 5 minutes. That guy Salon Impractical Jokers pissed his pants. I own an escape room and I once guided couple into one of our more moody ambience room and they told me we would totally base a sex dungeon off this vibe. See? You even have a desk in here to get started. Also you see people's true parenting skills. My favorite quote is from a lovely family that went into a room in 5 minutes and the father gathered his overeager children and told them you're being assholes. We're in a huge tech area and we get a lot of corporate groups with some very important people. A week ago we had a Fortune 500 CEO through and he walked up to my staff and started bragging about his 50,000 Instagram followers. Basically trying to impress college kids. We definitely giggled about that one, especially when we looked him up and he had like 300 followers. But hey, he killed it in the room. I once accidentally pulled a light from the ceiling because it looked odd. Turned out it was just a light. Escape room employee here. We have a game that has wooden floors and guests regularly try to pull up the nailed down floorboards with a hammer that's in the room, thinking they'll find clues. Also one time I asked the group if they had ever played an escape game before. And an elderly gentleman responded, one time my wife tied me up and gagged me. Does that count? His friends thought it was hilarious. But the high school couple that was obviously on a first date they were paired up with did not find it as funny. Edit. I just remembered another common thing people do. Sometimes halfway through a game, someone that wasn't paying attention will walk up to the entrance, realize it's unlocked, and tell the rest of the group they solved it. Then groupthink sets in and everyone just stands in the hallway as their time runs out. If you want to get nothing in return, you can like and join my Discord. There is a link in the description.